Now, think about your business for a second. Do you find that your business has grown, it's expanded a little bit, it's got a little bit bigger, but you just maybe hit that barrier, you just can't make the business grow as big as you think it should? It deserves to grow. You just can't get through that pain threshold. What do? Is it something you're doing? Is it something you've got to do? Is it somewhere you've got to go? Well, really what you want is some really good advice. Duncan Cheatle's with me right now. You're one of the keynote speakers that we're here today. The title of your keynote was Breaking Down Barriers to Growth.
Yeah.
Just what exactly does that mean?
Well, I think, sorry, that's going on. I think that's, it's down to the fact that I see so many businesses getting up to somewhere between 500,000 and 2 million turnover. They're chasing the top line, and then they kind of creep to a halt. And I think there's a number of factors that go into that. And so my talk was really about addressing some of the things that all of those businesses, or most businesses I see, going through those kind of pains as they grow and then slowing down, how to break through those.
But we do see that with businesses, don't we? That they reach plateaus and they sit there, and it seems to be very difficult for them to move on. What are the strategies that they should be thinking about if they get to, they're a £500,000 or £1 million company? What are the strategies they should be looking at to become the 2 million or the £3 million company?
Well, I think there's three things all businesses should be focused on, and it's a way of simplifying things somewhat. You're juggling three resources: people, time and money. And I guess if you can kind of just get great people to come and work for you, and if you get them and retain them for longer, you'll get better productivity. And this sounds all very obvious, but what I see in so many early stage businesses is they hire the moment they need somebody, and time is ticking away, so they reach out and grab somebody even if their instinct is telling them they're not quite right. So what they end up doing is building this team, this non-optimal team. And then I talk about the fact that actually businesses as they grow are facing diseconomies of scale, not economies of scale, which is what we're all kind of taught at school.
Yes.
And that's really just about the fact that there are step costs at every stage. So if you think about it, you start your business on the kitchen table and you've really only got yourself to cover a salary or a living expense. As you start hiring people, you're introducing a cost. As you move out of your kitchen table or home and into office space, there's another step cost there. And there are step costs when you get to sort of 8-10 staff and you need to hire a manager or a director to work alongside you. And the problem is, what you see is businesses, their top line going up, but their profit flatlining.
Yeah.
And consistently people convince themselves that they're investing in the future, but these are not capital expenditure things. What they're finding is their margins coming down, and that's why businesses just grind to a halt, because they don't have enough cash coming out of their business to get to the next stage.
When you're standing up there and you're giving the presentation, and you're probably talking to some well-seasoned business professionals, I would imagine at times, do they look at you and they go, how does he know? What's his background? Why should we listen to him? I mean, what is your background?
Well, that's largely why from the outset I kind of put my credentials out and say, look, I haven't built £1 billion business, but what I've had the good fortune of doing is building a number of businesses, but most importantly one of them around a club for fast growing entrepreneurs. So we have in the Supper Club 350 of Britain's fastest growing entrepreneurs, and I've had the good fortune to chair 500 of the 1,500 round tables we've done in our 11-year history. So you see the same patterns.
You see the same patterns.
You see them again and again, and I think that's a fairly fortunate and unique position. And so what I do is pull together the threads, and you see the same ones. 95% of businesses face 95% of the same issues, and that's probably what you'd expect. And I try and sort of, there's so many things, but try and pick out the really core ones.
What do you reckon the big ones are? What are maybe the top 3 or 5 that are actually out there? That, if you were to say them, what would actually happen? People in the audience would go, "Yep, that's us." What are the ones that they would recognise?
Well, the first one is this sort of reality gap, as I call it, which is where people have grown the top line and they maybe get up to somewhere close to 1 million or even up to 2 million turnover, and the profit's low, and they have an aspiration alongside having built the business to that stage to sell their business, or at least get it, if they don't want to sell it, to a point where they can it's throwing off cash and they can buy that, pay off the mortgage, school fees if that's what their thing is, but either financial independence or outright wealth. And the time scale when you ask, well, what's the horizon for this? It's always 3 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years. And yet what I find is I go back and ask them later, in 3 years' time, it's still 3 to 5 years. And it's because they're not getting enough margin in the business. So no one's ever going to buy the business, and it's not got to the point where it's profitable enough to make a difference. And that puts incredible pressure on your husband or wife or your partner, and on yourself in time. And then, so it kind of snowballs. So I think the reality gap, born out of the diseconomies of scale and low margins I talked about. The other one is the time trap, where founders, for whatever reason, whether it's the inability to let go, not hiring the right people, so getting in people that they like but not necessarily that are better than them, and just not delegating effectively. So they end up in this position where they're just micromanaging. And great people don't want to be micromanaged. So you don't attract the right talent, you don't keep people, and you're on a treadmill. So I think those are the two standout ones.
They're the ones you see time and time again.
Time and time again.
That actually are holding them back from the. If there was one piece then of advice, maybe, and I know you've already kind of given it, but if there was one piece of advice then for somebody listening to this, maybe to get them in the right mindset for the way they should bring things forward, what would you say to them?
If there was one thing, and without repeating what I've already said, it would be build capital value. So try and build a business that you could sell. What I mean by capital value, value somebody else, another business, or somebody would buy. And the reason for that is, we put our blood, sweat and tears into building a business, but if at the end of the day, God forbid, we fall ill, or our other half falls ill, and we're not able to run that business, what good is it that you built up this kind of pension pot that's going to create all of this financial independence if it's dependent wholly on you running it? So the same disciplines of building a business to exit, whether you want to sell or not, are great disciplines, and they will be about, of course, building a profitable business, but also getting the other side of the equation, which is the right processes, the right team, all working like clockwork, and then you're going to enjoy business more, and you've got something that can work if you do take some time out. And the litmus test is, could you take 3 months out?
I'd love to do that. Just got to work a bit harder. Are you back again tomorrow?
I'm not, unfortunately. I've got something else I have to go to, so it's today only.
Today only.
But it's been great.
Well, listen, if you didn't have the opportunity to go along to the keynote speech that Duncan gave, then of course you can actually listen to this once again. Some great advice in there as well. I suppose the biggest problem that all of us have, I think, is actually identifying that the problem is there and owning up to it, and then being able to do something about it. If we go along quite, happily in our lives thinking that, well, that doesn't apply to me, then maybe you're never ever going to get the actual advantage that you would get from the information that you give. And I think that's the biggest problem that businesses have, isn't it? They'll be the ones that would be asleep in the presentation because it doesn't apply to them.
There's always one.
There's always one. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. If people want to find out more information, or they want to go along maybe to the supper evenings or whatever, obviously you've got to be, they're entrepreneur supper evenings. Where do they go? What do they do?
Either the supperclub.com, thesupperclub.com, or preludegroup.co.uk, which talks about some of the events we do, which are much more open, like Speaker Boutique, and where we get speakers along as well to share their insights.